Okay, good morning. First, a quick note. This week I think will be the last week of the weekly share. For now, we'll continue after the summer, but Ezras Hashem. I know. In as much, I'm not in the middle of any series, so I just have a little one-off machshava that we'll talk about. Some people are so consequential that almost every word out of their mouth becomes like a story. And people, like, every interaction with them becomes a story. This is there's whole books written about the Briskerov's quips or the Chazon Ish's, lines. Now, one of these people who was, of that level of consequence was the Chofetz Chaim, obviously. Chofetz Chaim, almost every word that came out of his mouth, every interaction that he had with people, with situations, became, memorable and consequential. Now, in particular, the Chofetz Chaim and Shabbos was like a very special thing. Chofetz Chaim, like his the Hibbenkeit that he had for it, and the chashivas and chavivas the Chofetz Chaim displayed for Shabbos was like palpable. Now I'll just share a few quick stories. I just want to build a shtickle picture over here. There's a famous story, if I count the story, there was once an American Rav who was talking in a shul somewhere, I don't know, we'll say Buffalo. He was giving a drasha, and he said that there was a bacher in Radin At the Chofetz who was smoking on Shabbos, and he was caught, and he was brought to the Chofetz Chaim, and it was clear that they'd have to throw him out of yeshiva. The bacher smoking on Shabbos can't be kept in yeshiva, and he says he was told that he's going to be thrown out of yeshiva, and he has to go. The Chofetz Chaim wants to talk to him, and he came into the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim sat there by his table. The Chofetz Chaim was an old man already. And the Chofetz Chaim took his hand in his hands, and he starts rubbing his hand. And he said, Chofetz Chaim just sat there, rubbed it for a few seconds, then Chofetz Chaim starts crying. Chofetz Chaim says, your hand is so soft. This hand is going to have to be in Gehenna for Chilul Shabbos. Rubs it, cries a little more, and that was all he said. And this Rav said over the story that the Chofetz Chaim, made this impact with Shabbos. And the Rav said, and they say over, that this Bachur, even though he was thrown out of yeshiva and was probably a maskil and was attached to all sorts of things he shouldn't have been, he never was able to smoke on Shabbos again. Every time he wanted to pick up a cigarette, he would feel like he had his hand was on fire, like a scar. And when the Rav finished his speech, an older man in the back came over to him and he said, "How do you know the story? How do you know this is true?" And the Rav said, "I don't know. I've heard this. This is Azai Zakman." And this older man tells him, "Now you could say that it's true. I'm that Bachur and I was never able to do any Chil Shabbos again." So this is the Chofetz Chaim's attachment to Chashivas. I heard this story from Yankel Galinsky, who said over that when he was a young man, he was fundraising in I think São Paulo, Brazil, where after the Holocaust there were some Jews there, who settled there. He was fundraising and he went into Big Veer, Mr. Katz, and Mr. Katz was not Shemer Shabbos, and he decided to pull out this Chofetz Chaim story and try to do it on Mr. Katz. And he sits down in his office, he takes his hand, and he says, "Mr. Katz." He starts, massaging his hand, and he starts talking about Shabbos. And Mr. Katz erupts like a volcano and says, "You're out of your mind? You came to my office to rub my hand and tell me about Shabbos? Get out of here, I don't want to ever see you again." So he went back to his hotel, he was despondent. He was like, obviously this doesn't work for everybody, this move. So he says he was sitting in his hotel, it was the night, he was sad, he's, a very unsuccessful day. He gets a knock on the door. And Mr. Katz is standing there, with his, Mr. Katz is embarrassed, he's got his hat in his hand. Mr. Katz says, "I'm here with a big check for you." He says, "I don't understand, what happened?" So Mr. Katz tells him, "I went home at the end of the day, and I told my wife, you won't believe what happened to me today. Some crazy Meshulach from Eretz Yisrael, who's about 4 feet tall, comes into my office, starts rubbing my hand and telling me about Shabbos, and I threw the guy out, the Meshugana thing," and he says, my wife looks at me and she says, if that's where you're holding, then I'm done. So he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You don't remember when we came to São Paulo, we were young, we were Holocaust survivors. We told ourselves, listen, we're not going to be able to keep Shabbos over here, make a parnasa, build a life. So we'll do it now, but later on, in Mitzvah Shem, when we get old, we'll come back around to Shmir Shabbos. And you're a man in your 60s now already, and if this is your reaction when someone reminds you of Shabbos, I see we're never going to come back around to the deal we made." So Mr. Katz came with a big check, and Ran Kolinsky says, "You see the Chofetz Chaim's move. The Chofetz Chaim's hand rubbing for Shabbos still works." In particular, where the Chofetz Chaim left a big impression on Shabbos, is different people who were guests at his Suda. I once heard of Shimon Schwab. It's a famous clip. I'm sure people have seen it. I once heard of Shimon Schwab describe his Suda at the Chofetz Chaim's house. He says he was sitting at the Chofetz Chaim's house. The Chofetz Chaim asked them around the table. He says, the man, Kaidu Chazal tell us, the man was able to taste like anything, right? The man could taste like whatever you wanted. So the Chofetz Chaim asked the people assembled at a Shabbos table. He says, what happens if you didn't think anything? You just ate the man. What did it taste like? So Shimon Schwab, and he tells it over. You can tell he's still living it. It's 55 years later. He says, when the Chofetz Chaim asked the question, you could tell it was a rhetorical question. He was looking around. There was an answer to be had. And the Chofetz Chaim didn't. He was quiet for a minute. Does anybody know? And said anything. The Chofetz Chaim says, if you don't think anything, it tastes like nothing. And in Ruchnius, everything's like that. If you don't think anything, it tastes like nothing. This has nothing to do with Shabbos, even the story, but like the type of mark he left on him being at the Chofetz Chaim Shabbos Suda. Now, the Nakuda of the Chofetz Chaim Shabbos Suda that I want to talk about is as follows. It's brought down in many different svarim, right? It's brought down in different shuvas, kaidua, that the Klal Yisrael's noyeg, based on the Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Kufi Test. The Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Kufi Test tells us that when you come home from shul Friday night, so two malachim are malavi you. One's good, one's bad, one's happy for your success, one's upset with your success, and based on your presentation, your behavior, you force the malachim to get on board, right? One way or the other. Now, based on that, Klal Yisrael has a song that we all sing, and based more or less every stripe of Klal Yisrael sings Shalom Aleichem when we come home from shul on Friday night. There's different minhagim, how many pismain we say, how many times you say each pismain, which ones we leave out, which ones we don't leave out. Fine. So there's a lot of different, nuance and discrepancy between Klal Yisrael and minhagim. But Yechshia, most of Klal Yisrael is receptive to that Gemara in Shabbos and makes it a very big part of the Shabbos, Suda. Now, it's Yedua, and this Ramesh Sternbach brings this down in Tshuva, but it's brought down in other places also, that when the Chofetz Chaim would have guests by his Shabbos Suda, he would skip Shalom Aleichem. Meaning, he said, God lachnas asarchem mikabalas b'nei Ashchina, which means even HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kal v'chomer just a malach, and he would skip Shalom Aleichem, says the malachim could wait a little longer, I'll sing for them later. In the middle of the Suda, once the guest had eaten already and started having the Suda, Chofetz Chaim would sing Shalom Aleichem by the table. Chofetz Chaim was in a big rush to get the Suda started. Now, this idea of being in a rush to get the Suda started, the Chofetz Chaim, and this is many stories bring down the Chofetz Chaim's rush to get the Suda started, especially when you get a guest, is what I want to discuss. Now, it's important. It's interesting to note as follows: this thing about starting the Suda quickly by Shabbos, irrespective of guests, meaning just getting the Suda quickly started on Shabbos, is actually a din in Shulchan Aruch. It's a halacha. Now, maybe that's the wrong way to say it. It's a din. It's a din. I'll tell you why. The Gemara in Psachim and Daf Kuvav, when it tells us the chiyuv of making kiddush, the Gemara tells us that when a person b'chnisasi l'Shabbos, when he comes into Shabbos, a person is supposed to make kiddush. Now the Gemara darshans it. It says Zachar Siyam Shabbos l'Katche Zachrei Alayayim b'chnisasi. He's supposed to be maskir Shabbos Alayayim b'chnisasi when you come into Shabbos. Now Tosfos Afanar in Psachim, Tosfos points out that this is not really a drasha gemura. This is not a deiraisa. It's not a deiraisa that you have to be maskir Shabbos Alayayin. The Alayayin piece is only the Rabbanon, maybe in Asmachta. And the Rambam in Perek Chavtes and Nafesh Shabbos says it even more explicitly. The Rambam says, Zachreu Shabbos l'Katchay, Zachreu b'diburcha. You should remember Shabbos with your words. And he says what words you should say. And then he says, in Midivrei Seifrim, Midirabbanon, you're supposed to be maskir at alakos. This is what the Gemara says, and this is how it's a big machlekes rishonim. If it's a deiraisa or it's only an asmachta or a derabbanon, yiich shiyah. Now, the Gemara over there in Psachim is mashma that the most that an emphasis on hakdama, meaning as much as you could be makdim this haskara, if you could do this haskara right away, that's the best way to do it, to be makdim the haskara. Now, based on that, the Torah in Siman Reisha and Aleph and Hilchos Shabbos, the Torah says very clearly that when a person gets home to his house, the Torah says, Yimayir lechel miyad. So then in the Torah, a person should be mimayir to eat right away. Don't waste time. Get the Suda started right away. And the Beis Yosef Afanart brings down from this Gemara in Shabbos, that this is from this Gemara in Psachim, that there's a din that you're supposed to be mimayir to start the Suda right away because, Akdume, the Bimakdim Kiddush is the best way to go about it. Now, from this Torah, it would sound like that every Friday night should be like Pesach, right? Like Kaddish, the Tati comes from Shul, you make Kiddush Shnel, that should be every Friday night. The Torah says, Yimar lahakdim, same din, person has to hurry home to make Kiddush right away. Now, why isn't it so? Why is that not the minig? So, the Shulchan Aruch already tamps down the Torah a little bit. Shulchan Aruch says a lashon of nothing. It's better to do Kiddush right away. The Magen Avram tamps it down even further. The Magen Avram brings down from a tshuva from the Ramami Fanu that says as follows. The Ramami Fanu says, he brings. This is a din. The Gemara Pesachim says you're supposed to make Kiddush right away, you're supposed to get started right away. Zak the Rambam Mifano. But Lamaisa, he says. The Rambam Mifano was a Makubal who lived, let's say, the end of the 1500s, maybe into the 1600s, just to date him, and this will be important for a second. Hang on to this thought. The Rambam Mifano was a Makubal who lived in the end of the 1500s, which is Pachas Yosef, the same Tkufa as the Arizal and his Talmidim. Keep that in mind. Now, the Rambam Mifano says, Buk Chazi says, look around. People do not hurry to start the Suda right away. People shmuz with their friends, they say good Shabbos, they walk home, they talk to their kids, they sit. People are not running home to make the Suda right away, he says. If Klal Yisrael is not Nevi'im, B'nei Nevi'im heim. They know what they're doing. Klal Yisrael is not just being mezalzel in whatever this appropriate, aktume of Kiddush is supposed to be. So says the Rambam Mifano, he says, he does value. I'm going to read you a little bit. He says, "Minhagan shel roiv Yisrael mishanam kadmonius shaloi liyos nidchafim v'nivhalim al beisim b'Shabbos sudas halayla." The minig of most of Klal Yisrael is not to hustle home and make Kiddush right away. Take a vachat tefillas ha'erev, but kol echad l'fi oynik shaloi v'hanach lam liyisrael shebnei neviim lahem, and leave it to Klal Yisrael. They know what they're doing. They're bnei neviim lahem. Then he continues and he says, "Why? Ki yayin vadei d'rabbanan." This that the Gemara in Pesachim says you have to make Kiddush al yayin. That bit of yayin is vadei d'rabbanan. Mitzvah schira shidei raisa. The mitzvah of Schiras Shabbos, which is the Deraisa, that you Makayim and Tefillah ready right away. So he says, so Mela, it's not such a rush. Only, he says, the mi sha'amar lamara likanas l'sudas halayla, those who say, meaning the Paiskim who said to hurry home and make Kiddush right away, maybe they held you have to fast in Erev Shabbos. There is a minig that's brought down to fast in Erev Shabbos. Maybe those Paiskim were going with that minig of fasting in Erev Shabbos, and they said, hurry home, make Kiddush right away because you're fasting. You don't want to, starve yourself when Shabbos is coming already. So this is the Rambam Mifano. And Mela, based on this, the Magen Avram and Shulchan Aruch and Reish Ayin Aleph, the Magen Avram brings down this Rambam Mifano and says, pump the brakes a little bit. The hurrying home to make Shabbos, make Kiddush right away, it's not, it's not such a big deal. And therefore, the Shulchan Aruch Rav and the Mishabur also, for example, Shulchan Aruch Rav says, mitzvah min ha-muvchar, l'kadosh muktam, to make Kiddush right away. It's a mitzvah min ha-muvchar, it's a good thing, but it's not, so consequential. It's not a din that Imam have to do it right away. The Mishabur also brings down that if a person's not that hungry, you ate a little, you're not that hungry, or Shabbos is early in the day, Shabbos is 5 o'clock, or whatever it is, you like to have supper at 7, so you could take your time. The Mishabur says, you don't have to rush. Now, what does this have to do with the Chofetz Chaim and Shalom Aleichem and starting the Suda? So the Mishabura over here says an interesting thing. In Mishabura, in Reish Ayin Aleph, the Mishabura says that if a person has guests at his table, or his kids and his family is hungry, then you have to do it right away. And particularly the guests. The family is just, chesed or whatever. Particularly the guests. Mishabura says a fascinating detail. Mishabura says when you invite a poor person to have a Suda at your table, that's a form of pledging tzedakah. You're pledging that you're going to give this guy a meal. And the din by tzedakah that does not have a set time frame, meaning tzedakah that isn't set to a time frame, there's an isser of bal yachal. You're not allowed to push it off. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah and Neftalah tells us that all pledges, all nidrei tzedakah have an isser of bal yachal. Now, givein lach, normally bal yachal is a machlekes tanaim, but it has a certain amount of yamim tovim. When you pledge a carbon, you have to bring it within 3 yamim tovim, 2 yamim tovim. There's sugis about when you have to bring it. But tzedakah, when you pledge it to an ani who's in front of you right now, who does not have a set amount of time that you told him, he doesn't have a 90, 60, 180, whatever, he doesn't have a set amount of time that he's going to wait. So Bayachal kicks in right away. So says the Chofetz Chaim in the Mishabura, that even though I'm being makel and I'm saying like the Magen Avram, that you don't start your Suda right away, but if you have a guest waiting, you have to start right away. Now, additionally, the Chofetz Chaim famously, in another place, in Tafresh Lamed Tes, in Hilchos Sukkos, where the Chofetz Chaim is very, very machmir, that on Laila Rishayna, if it's raining, the person should wait to start a Suda. The Chofetz Chaim says you should wait till Chatzos to start your Suda on Laila Rishayna if it's raining. It says the Chofetz Chaim, in the Sharet Tzion over there, that if a person invited guests, then start your Suda right away. Don't wait till Chatzos. Why, says the Chofetz Chaim? Because there's a teres issa already. You're being over in a solav. Forget about the mitzvah kiyumis. You're waiting for the mitzvah to say of sukkah. You're going to be over a lav of not starting your Suda, of the bayachal. The ani's waiting to eat. You're going to be over the lav. Now, this is brought down, interestingly, in the Dvar Avram. The Dvar Avram, the Kovner Rav, who died in the Holocaust, shouldn't say that. He died during the Holocaust. I don't think he was killed by the Nazis. He died during the Holocaust. The Kovner Rav brings down as follows. He brings down the sugya bal yachal he's handling. He says, Haggah, it's a little footnote in the Dvar Avram Chelik Beis. He says, V'hinini lahaskir b'zeh, masha shamati ha'ar nefla b'shem harav ha'gayna tzadik m'reina v'yisrael meir m'riyad m'shlita. So Pashas, he didn't see this in the Mishabur. This is something he heard from the Chofetz Chaim. I don't know what year he wrote this tshuva, when this Haggah, but he says, I heard from the Gaon in Tzadik, the Chofetz Chaim, that hama'arach ani l'sudas Shabbos, someone who invites a guest, miyad b'bayim b'beis ha'knesses, tzarach l'mar l'issa. He has to hurry and make a Suda right away. The aniyim are here. La'alter of baltacher. You're over right away. It says the Dvar Avram, I'm not so masking. He says, it's a nice idea what the Chofetz Chaim is saying. Again, back to the Ramam Yifanu's pasture. L'maisa, the Welt is not nizr in this. The Welt brings guests, the Welt makes sudas, and the Welt doesn't rush to make the suda right away. So it says the Dvar Avram, since the Welt is not nizr in this, I need to figure out, how to validate, how to explain what the Welt does, he says. He says, here's the svar. He says, someone who brings an ani to the suda, it's as if you stipulated, you told the ani straight out, when I eat, I will feed you. The ani doesn't expect, meaning the time frame is not the instant Shabbos starts, I'm achrayt to feed you already. The ani understands that when you eat, you'll feed the ani too. He says, it's as if you specified and delineated a set time when you're going to give the tzedakah. The mashal person has hours at his home. It's not bal yachal. If you meet an ani in shul and you tell him, I have Kabbalah's call in my house on Tuesday at 8 o'clock, and I want to give you $100. It doesn't become bal yachal now on Sunday night when you met him. You gave him a time. He's going to come meet you. He says the Dvar Avram, when the ani's coming, to eat, it's as if you specified a time. Now, Ramesh Sternbuch in the Tshuva and Shuvas Anagis is mitzvakech with this. He says it's not true, back and forth, and he holds you should be machmir like the Chofetz Chaim, that if a person has guests for Shabbos, you have to start your Suda right away. Now, this is Kilu, the Chofetz Chaim and the Balei Halacha's pasture in regard to starting the Suda right away. Now, there's a famous reason to not start the Suda right away that I want to talk about that is mostly amongst Hasidim. That's, for those, I doubt anyone here is makbid on this, but it's brought down, and it comes from Magen Avram. Likewise, the Magen Avram brings down from the Sefer Tikunei Shabbos, that between the hours of 6 and 7, you're not supposed to make Kiddush. This is a Bakant Zach, and I'll just explain just quickly what the basic framework of it is, and for a second. So the Brisa and Mazalis and other places in Midrashim explain to us that there are 7 Mazalis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Teila, the Sivav of the world. And now it's unclear exactly what that means in a practical sense, meaning we don't see these things during these hours. Now the Mazalis are the Shiva Kochvei Leches, which really comes from the Gemara, is the Chama is the sun, Lavan is the moon, Madim is Mars, Kochav is Mercury, Tzedek is Jupiter, Noiga is Venus, Shabsai is Saturn. These are the 7 Kochvei Noiga that run the world. Now the way they're set up is on an hour cycle. Each one of them takes an hour turn. So if you do the math, when Hashem started the world, so the Ma'iris were Nitlu on Yom Revi. Right, the days of creation, the Ma'iris were Nitlu and the Shemaim and the Yom Revi. L'chayr, these are part of the Ma'iris. These were Nitlu and Yom Revi. So if you start doing the hours, it's a cycle of 7. So every day you have 3 cycles plus 4 hours. Right, that's what we have. Which every day is 3 cycles plus 4 hours. We could count it up here, but what do you say? 3 plus 3. What do you mean? 7 is 21. There's 3 hours left in the day. Right, so there's 3. Yeah, exactly. 3. Yeah, I'm sorry. 3 plus 3. 3 full cycles. And then 3 spares, and then the cycle continues. So every day you started a different one, meaning if the first cycle started from Chama, then, so if Wednesday started from Chama, Thursday's not going to start from Chama. Thursday's going to start from Mars. And if Thursday starts from Mars, then Friday starts from Uchein, keep the math going. Now, so it arrives to the conclusion that on Friday night, the hour between 6 and 7 is where it switches from Tzedek to Noiga. Okay, now Noiga is bad. Noiga is the destructive, force, and Tzedek's a good force. So it says that Tikunei Shabbos, and this is Magen Avram brings down, a person should be makbid, and this is interesting because this is not how people remember this. The way people remember this usually is you don't make Kiddush between 6 and 7. That's not what the Tikunei Shabbos says. Tikunei Shabbos says, Hayois Tzedek is good, and Noiga is bad. You should try to be makdim Kiddush to Tzedek. That's what the actual words of the Magen Avram brings down from the Tikunei Shabbos. Tzedek is good, Noiga is bad, be makdim it. Now, to be honest, the Magen Avram and the Tikunei Shabbos is not the first place that this pops up. The Maril, who's the Avim Minig Ashkenaz, in a Tshuva, and Tshuva's Maril, doesn't take it all the way and say you can't make Kiddush, but he ties the Gemara and Shabbos that we opened up with the 2 Malachim come home with you, the Malach who's good and the Malach who's bad, to Noiga and Tzedek. The Maril says, Hayos Shabbos arrives at the crossroads of Noiga and Tzedek. The Malachim, the representatives of these, Mazalas, also come home with you on Shabbos, Noiga and Tzedek. And therefore the Avodah of Friday night is to make sure that Tzedek dominates, not Noiga. So now the Magen Avram says to do it early. Now, Lemaisa, there's a lot of problems with this Magen Avram, meaning just calendar-wise. I'm not really such a calendar nerd, but for those who are into calendars, exactly the structure of this, it's not exactly 6 to 7. That's the wrong way to calculate it. I mean, Rosh Hashanah is in different places in the world, and different places in if I could call him a friend, Rabbi Baruch Kaufman, he's a Rav in Jackson. I know him from Yeshiva, so he's a big calendar expert. He is Rachas. Anybody wants more, I'll give you his number after the share. You could call him. He'll tell you exactly what the accurate minutes, meaning when actually 6 to 7 is not 6 to 7 on a clock. The Milchus Elazar talks about this, but today the popular meaning became Pachas Yosef 6 to 7. Now, I guess it's really just a thought experiment. What happens if you're from the Kehilas that are makbid on this Magen Avraham the Tikkun Shabbos, but you have guests, and Shabbos arrives at 6:40, you can make Kiddush. What do you do? I don't have an answer. I don't have the answer to this question. Well, what do? Do you make Kiddush? Which one takes precedent? Does the Baal Ta'achar and the Akdume of Kiddush take precedent, or does the fear of Noiga, of 6 to 7, take precedent? Now, even in the Chassidish world, I think this is a machlekes. Likutei Mariach brings down that if you have guests, you should do it. Other Gracie rabbis used to say, if you have guests, you make Kiddush, and before you make Kiddush, you say, Avaracham u'viracham, I'm a Muslim. You say a tefillah that there should be no shlachta zachan that happened to you, and you hurry to make Kiddush. Others, Lamashal, were very, very makbid about this. The Shineva, the Divrei Chaim's son, the Shineva, in his old age, it's brought down. The Shavarsky Rebbe brings this down in his, he's a Talmud of his. He brings down the Shineva was makbid during all the Yemei HaShavim, the fast every Erev Shabbos. This is one Erev Shabbos. He was an old man already. He was fasting, and he made Shabbos early in time to make Kiddush, before Noiga. And he picked up the cup, and as he picked up the cup, and he started doing his little bit, kavanas, and getting ready, the clock struck 6, and now the Shineva was stuck. And he was an old man, he was hungry, but he held like this, to put down the kais. He's being mavazah the kais shel bracha. He picked up the kais shel bracha already, he's holding it, he's shuckling, he's making Kiddush. To make Kiddush, what are you going to do with the Tikkun Shabbos with the Magen Avraham? So they say the Shineva sat and shuckled for an hour with the cup in his hand as an old man, and then finally he made Kiddush when 7 o'clock happened. So, exactly what amount of chaims to take this, it even depends in the Chassidish world itself. It's not so clear. But I guess I'll just leave you off. It's a thought experiment. You have guests, it's 6 o'clock, what do? All right. And Mitzvah Shem after the summer we'll continue. Yeah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.